Hey guys, SD here with the Game of Thrones SpoilerCast recap. And, fair warning, I have a little bit of a headache. It's been a rough weekend. And, I'm pretty much just going to blow through as quickly on everything as I can. Tonight's episode was an extra long, 71 minutes long. It definitely dragged in a couple of points, but picked up towards the end. So, it's not the longest episode of the season. Season finale comes up next week. It is 81 minutes long. So, 71 was a bit of a stretch, but I made it through. Got my notes. Let's go. So we start out, no cold open. Yeah, that's becoming pretty normal. There's a shot of, it looked like the map table at Dragonstone, and then the fire. That was a very brief shot. I just an establishing shot, I guess. And then they cut from that to where Jon and his group are marching through the northern wilderness. They're talking about stuff. They make some comments that make Gendry a little uncomfortable about, how the best way to keep warm is basically to sleep with each other. And since there's no ladies around, you make do with what you have. And yeah, Gendry gets really weirded out. Jon attempts to give the sword that he has, which was gifted to him by the previous Night Watch commander, who was Jorah's father. Tries to give it to Jorah because it's a family heirloom. He's like, "Here, you take it." And Jorah's like, "Yeah, you know what? I kind of dishonored my entire family, so no, you keep it. You do pretty good with it." So Longclaw is still with Jon, and then we cut to, Arya and Sansa, where Arya is talking about some story about arrows. Like, she was wanting to learn how to shoot the arrows, but of course, because she's a chick, she's not allowed to. It's a long, drawn-out story. Basically, the guy, Sir Barrister, I think, was the guy who was watching them, training them there. He saw it happen, but he didn't say anything. And then she confronts Sansa about the note, which turns out to be a note that Sansa wrote all the way back in first season, under duress. Cersei kind of forced her to send a note to her family to encourage them to come swear loyalty to Joffrey after the alleged Ned Stark treason. So the note was very incriminating, but of course Sansa was just a young girl at the time, and Arya just didn't want to hear that. Because Sansa tried to explain herself, and Sansa and Arya's like, "Nah, I don't believe that at all." So there's a little bickering back and forth. I really hate it when they pit the two of them against each other, because that's a very common story trope, is two sisters that are complete opposites and they fight each other. So that really sucks that they're not bonding. Takes the bait. Oh yeah. Basically, Littlefinger set that whole thing up. Littlefinger knew Arya would find it. Littlefinger knew Arya would accuse Sansa of incriminating or being treasonous, and that would would get the two girls separated, because Littlefinger wants Sansa all to himself. He doesn't want anyone else coming in. So then we cut back to the guys in the north, and the Hound and Big Red are chatting, and they bond a little bit over Brienne of Tarth, because Big Red's got a thing for her, and the Hound's like, "Her? Really? Her? Man, that's not gonna go well." And Big Red's like, "Oh yeah, we're totally gonna get together and make just big giant monstrous children. They're gonna be amazing. They're gonna rule the world." And then we cut to Jon and Eye Patch Dude, the other guy who's died and been brought back by the Fire God, where they're talking about the Fire Lord's purpose for why they're here and that sort of thing. And there's a lot of talking in the first half hour, 45 minutes worth of the show. Then we cut back to, finally we cut to Tyrion and Daenerys. And Daenerys is telling Tyrion, "I like you because you're not a hero. I don't need a hero. Heroes do stupid things. I need you to be smart and survive. You are brave, but you're not a hero." see, oh yeah. Don't want a hero. Oh, trap setting. So, Tyrion starts talking about how Cersei's probably planning traps and how Cersei's probably trying to figure out what kind of traps Daenerys is setting. And Daenerys is like, well, I wouldn't set any traps. And he's like, okay, look, you need to start thinking like the enemy. You're a little too impulsive. Setting both the Tarleys, father and son, on fire was an impulsive act. You're a little impulsive. You need to start seeing things from the other side's point of view, because that, in order to understand them and be able to fight them properly, you need to understand them and see things. So Daenerys isn't really happy about that. She's very, she doesn't like being told she's wrong. And then he starts going into the whole line of succession bit, which I'm not entirely clear how that tracked in that conversation. So one minute they're talking about impulsiveness, and then the next minute he's talking about kids or something. I don't know. Because, Daenerys can't have kids. She's been told she can never bear children again. The dragons are her only children. But she doesn't want to talk about that at all. And she's like, we'll talk about that after I'm sitting on the throne. Go back out to the north, where they are set upon by a giant undead bear, which basically bitch slaps their entire group around, kills off a couple people. One of the guys, not the eye patch guy, but the other guy of that group, the one who's drunk all the time, gets a little mauled by the bear, and they have to seal up his, after they kill off the bear, they have to seal up his wounds using a flaming sword, which is kind of cool, kind of not. And then they keep moving. Then we go to Sansa, who's now talking to Littlefinger about Arya finding the note. And of course, Littlefinger's like, I don't know where she got that from. Beats the hell out of me. Do you think she's going to do anything? Maybe you should talk to Brienne and Atar, because, if one sister's trying to hurt the other sister, that's going to kind of violate her oath to protect both sisters. So, again, he's driving a wedge. He's driving a wedge between them. I hate this dude. I want to see him get his comeuppance. I almost hate him more than I hate Joffrey, because Joffrey was an in-your-face kind of evil. He wasn't a slimy, despicable, sneaky around behind you evil. Then we come back to the north, where they spot a couple undead people marching along, which must be like a scouting party. And so they set up an ambush, and they attack. And they're all fighting, and it's not going well until Jon slashes with his Valyrian steel sword the leader of the little troop, rendering him into just ice shards. And the moment he does that, all of the other undead, except for one, fall over dead. Or fall over no longer active. It's very coincidental that they just all happen to fall over except for the one, because, they just needed one to take captive to prove to Cersei and Daenerys and everyone else that there are actual undead. So I just found it very lazy storytelling to just happen to have everybody else die except for this one guy. So while they're trying to get that undead wrapped up, he's, hollering and screaming in his undead screaming voice, and they hear more undead coming. So Jon sends Gendry off. He's like, look, I need you to run back to the wall, send a raven to Daenerys saying, we're about to get up Schitt's Creek. Go do it. So Gendry runs off, and Jon and the group, they do actually manage to tie up their one little undead guy, put a bag over his head, and they go running. And they go running off in, I guess, a different direction from how they came in, because they didn't notice that there was ice, because all of a sudden now they're on ice. Ice that's cracking beneath their feet. And they go running across the ice, and the entire undead army is now swarming and surrounding and swooping in towards them on the ice. And they get to this, there's like a little rocky outcropping in the middle of the ice, like a tiny little island or something. And the good guys get there, and the undead army start falling through the ice. And so after several hundred of them fall through the ice, there's like millions of them, so a couple hundred, no big deal, fall through the ice, they all stop. So now you got good guys in the middle, big empty circle, and then millions of undead around that. They're screwed. The night falls, they all wake up in the morning, and the one guy who had gotten mauled by the bear has died during the night, froze to death probably, or just succumbed to his wounds. And luckily, John has the presence of mind to go, we need to burn this body. Otherwise, he's going to come back to life and get us all. Because, you're sitting there going, come on, guys, do something with the body. He got mauled by an ice bear. So they're taking care of that, and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And the eye patch guy points off across the way to where they can see the Night King and his little entourage standing off on a cliff top. He's like, yo, we just got to kill him. If we kill him, everyone else will die. Because remember how you killed that one dude and all the little guys we were fighting, they all died? All these other people would die if we can just kill the king. And I'm sitting here like, yeah, let's, we could just march right over there and kill the king right now. Because that's kind of what he was making it sound like. You just take out that dude would be cool. So then, things are starting to pick up. We cut to Sansa, who's been invited to meet with Cersei, or she's been invited to something in King's Landing, and she decides she's going to send Brienne in her stead, and Brienne's like, I don't feel comfortable doing that. First off, they invited you, they're not going to want me. Second off, I don't want to leave you behind here, and Sansa's all, I'm big enough and old enough to take care of myself, I'm not a child, da 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 da. And sends Brienne away. So it's like, great, that's going to be fantastic. I hope we don't have to see that kind of aftermath in next week's episode. Save all that crap for next season, please. There is another season coming. Probably not to like late 2018, but it's coming. So then we cut to Daenerys, who's gotten the Raven, because Gendry did make it to the wall. Daenerys has gotten the Raven, and God, my head, dudes. This was a long episode to sit through. Daenerys got the Raven, and Tyrion's trying to talk her out of it, but she's like, no, dude, I'm going. I need to help them. And Tyrion's like, well, sometimes doing nothing is the best thing to do. She goes, last time I listened to you and I did nothing, I regretted it. So, later. And she flies out with her dragons. Well, while she was busy doing that, the Hound is bored, sitting with his little group on their little island, and he starts throwing rocks at one of the undead. And his first rock hits it in the jaw and knocks his jaw off. And the second rock kind of lands a little short and slides across the ice. And the dead guy whose jaw he knocked off is kind of looking at the rock and going, one rock can stand on that ice. I bet I can stand on that ice. So he starts marching across the ice. And a couple more start marching across the ice. And so now, a few dozen, maybe, undead guys are marching across the ice to get the humans in the center, which isn't the whole million army, so it's not causing the ice to crack, but it's enough to cause problems. So they get to the center, everyone's fighting for their lives. Oh my god, this is so scary, and they're getting backed up to the highest pinnacle of this tiny little island, and Big Red almost dies, and he's like being dragged by the undead down into an ice hole, but the Hound loops in and saves him at the last second and pulls him away, and everything's long drawn out, battle, and then Daenerys shows up with the dragons, because, none of us were expecting that totally, and she starts lighting things on fire. But here's where it gets tricky. Daenerys and all three of the dragons came. They're all flying around doing their thing. Daenerys lands with one of them to start getting their survivors onto her dragon, and they got the undead dude. They get that guy under the dragon, and Jon's fighting off the stragglers that are getting up there, while the other two dragons are circling and burning and melting the lake and everything else. Night King gets out this giant ice spear. And the moment I saw this thing, I knew exactly where this was going. Let's see if you can figure it out. It's this giant ice spear. Hurls back, it throws it, strikes one of the dragons. Whoa, sploosh. Down in the depths of the lake. Dead. Daenerys is down to 2 dragons. They just killed one of her children. Bye-bye. So, of course, she's upset about it. And the Ice King starts getting a second lance ready, and Jon tells them, you guys need to leave, just go, because he's nowhere near getting onto the dragon. So they have to leave him behind. And so they all take off just as the Ice King is throwing the spear, and it just barely misses the dragon, and the other two make it away. And Jon's getting attacked, and he gets dragged down in the water. But of course, he pulls himself back out, and he's shivering and getting ready to try to fight. And then, out of nowhere, comes a guy swirling a fireball of death and destruction, riding a horse, and gets there, and it's Benjen, Uncle Benjen, and he gives Jon his horse and sends him off, and then presumably dies again. I don't know. It's like every time we see this guy, and then he looks like he dies. I guess maybe we'll see him again, maybe not. But so Jon goes off on the horse. Yeah, Jon makes it to the wall, and where everyone was, preparing to head out to the boats, because they have to get the undead there. Daenerys can ride a dragon all the way across the continent, but they have to take a boat. So Jon gets to the wall just as they're getting ready to get on the board the boat, and of course they strip him down. And I'm sure their first thought was, where the fuck did Jon get a horse from? But who knows? Guy is blessed by the gods, apparently. Daenerys gets to see all the lovely knife wounds, which are still pretty raw and ugly and gaping all over Jon's chest and torso from, where he got stabbed a million times and died. And they get to start heading on their way. Then we cut to Sansa, who's snuck into Arya's room, and she's snooping around in Arya's room, and she looks under Arya's bed, she pulls out a little case, she opens the case, and she starts pulling out these faces. And face, and another face, and what are all these faces? And then Arya comes in, and starts talking to her about how, she trained to be a faceless man, and she likes being faceless because she can use other people's faces, and be anything she wants just by having their face. And what would it be like having Sansa's face? And all she would have to do to be Sansa and wear all the pretty dresses and give all the men orders is take her face. And she's like approaching Sansa all sinisterly, but hands over a knife and leaves. I don't know. She's trying to creep Sansa out. It's very suspect. So then we cut to, I can put this away now because we're almost at the end. We cut to Jon waking up, and Daenerys is sitting there, and she looks really upset, and the first thing out of his mouth is, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. He's apologizing for Daenerys having gotten her dragon killed. In his mind, the whole thing was pointless because they lost their dragon and didn't really make any damage. Daenerys is like, totally, no, dude, no, this was good. I saw what you're talking about. We are going to destroy them. You and I together, we're going to destroy them. And he calls her Dany, and she's like, yeah, I don't know if you want to call me Dany. My brother used to call me Dany, and he wasn't the best of guys you want to hang out with. And he goes, okay, won't call you Dany. How about I call you my queen? Now, he doesn't say it like that, but, my queen. And she's just like, seriously? Seriously, you want to follow me? But why? I don't, yeah. So they have a very touching moment where they're staring at each other all emotionally, and they're all sad about the dragon loss, but happy because now they're united or something. And then she leaves them to rest. The final scene of the episode is we see the army of dead marching in lines, pulling these big old trains, and they're dragging something up out of the lake. They're dragging the dragon carcass up out of the lake. And they get the dragon carcass onto land, and the Night King comes, and he touches the dragon, and soothes into its head, and it opens its eye. Bright blue eyes. They now have an undead dragon, bitches. Which, it's a very logical course of action, because how else are you going to balance out the action in the battle between the dead and the living? Because previously the living had 3 dragons and the undead had none, so all the living would have to do is just circle around with the dragons, burning them until they were crispy. And now they've got their own dragon to fight with to kind of balance that out a little bit. So, credits roll. Next week's episode is going to be the sit-down summit with all the different kings and queens and whatnot. If you liked this, please tune in next week. Like, subscribe, tell me things you want to watch me watch or have me watch, and I'll tell you about. And I'm going to go. I'm going to try and get some sleep. Tomorrow's Eclipse Day. Yay. Until next time, ST out. Bye.